Okay. So one of the best framework for doing a deep learning problem is TensorFlow. And TensorFlow is a product of Google, which is built on top of Python. Okay. And typically in any uh, problem, people make use of this TensorFlow and they use some wrapper on top of it to, solve that problem. So here today we're gonna see TensorFlow and Keras, right? So TensorFlow is the framework, is the core framework for solving deep learning problems, and Keras is a wrapper which is built on top of TensorFlow to make our life easier in terms of coding. Okay.
So Keras is like a function on top of TensorFlow.
In a simplest way, if I have to put, you can just think it as a framework.
Okay.
Right. Actually, it's not exactly a framework. Yeah, it is a wrapper on top of TensorFlow. But now Keras has become so big that people use Keras independently also. They don't make use of TensorFlow, they directly use Keras. But in our course, we are mainly going to work with TensorFlow and we will use Keras on top of it as a wrapper because it makes the coding part easy. Okay.
Is Keras also owned by Google?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So first of all, let's import TensorFlow. Okay. So today I'll be showing you what are the functions, what are the functionalities is available with us with respect to TensorFlow and Keras. Just wanted to give you the broad high level understanding of the entire ecosystem. From next class onwards, we'll try to stitch these functionalities together to solve our problem. Okay. So if I have to import TensorFlow, I'll just try write TensorFlow STF. Okay. So TensorFlow by default it's available in Colab, Google Colab. So you did not install TensorFlow in your system. However, if you are working in local Python in your local system, you might need to install TensorFlow. Okay. So
One question, Ashutosh. So for any data science related project, like whatever you're teaching, right? You have taught like NumPy, TensorFlow, and then all those functions like algorithms and all, and pandas, or whatever module is going to be used. Say if I just stick to Google Colab, everything will be there, right? I don't have
yes.
to install anything.
In some cases, definitely you might encounter some packages which is not there in Google Colab also. So you can install
Mm.
anything in a Google Colab also. So you can
Okay,
just need
and
to do.
then yeah, and then we can do any project, like any complex project as well on Google Colab, right? I don't have to. It need not be always on my local machine.
Yes, you can do any problem in Google Colab, but that may not be the case always because there'll be always some constraint from client side. Since this entire thing is open source, right? If you are dealing with some sensitive data, your client might not allow you to use Google Colab. Rather, they would prefer to work in some closed cloud space. For example, you might use GCP, Google Cloud Platform. You might use AWS, Amazon SageMaker. You might use Azure, Databricks, right? But
Okay.
you'll always have some interface like this Google Colab where you'll have options to write your code in form of a notebook.
Okay, but no, what I'm saying is, for example, if I am transitioning to this into this career, right? So I might be doing some projects, right? And some complex projects which are there's a lot of data, and say it's a public data. I'm not going to be. It's not like sensitive or classified or anything like that. We can all do everything can be done on Google Colab.
Yes.
That's what, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So here I have imported TensorFlow. I'm checking the version of TensorFlow. So the latest TensorFlow version we're having is 2.7.0. And from TensorFlow, I'm importing module Keras. As I mentioned, Keras is a wrapper on top of TensorFlow. So this is Keras, and it is also having version 2.7.0. Okay. Now, Google has very nicely documented all the functions, all the options, hyperparameters, argument that function takes for Keras and TensorFlow in their respective websites. So whenever you are having free time, please visit this. They have very nicely documented everything, how you can start with Keras, what are the different things that you can do with Keras, right? Even I'll also keep using this documentations very often while solving any problem, because I don't remember all the codes, all the syntax. So sometimes I might refer this. This is a documentation of Keras, keras.io hyphen API models. Let me go to the root path. Yeah, right. Similarly, for TensorFlow also, you are having this tensorflow.org. If you'll do it, you'll get the all everything about TensorFlow.
Is TensorFlow like a data structure like NumPy and Pandas?
It's not actually a NumPy or Pandas. It's a framework. So when we say a framework, basically what we mean is, for example, I can say that Excel can be a framework. Microsoft Excel can be a framework for doing some data crunching. It's more like a tool, right?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Now let us see what are the things that we are having in Keras, right? So I'm gonna show you from top bottom approach the things we are having in Keras, right? So df dot Keras. Okay, I'm going to filter some data here. So I'll be showing only those things which is not starting with underscore scroll, because those are not the modules, right? So these are the things you'll be having in Keras. You'll have layers, options to create layers. You'll have different kind of loss functions. You'll have matrix for determining the performance of your model. You'll have pre-processing module. If you look this, a few other things that we have already covered in class, right? We know what we meant by a layer. We have already learned some loss functions like square error loss, binary cross entropy, right? So in a high
And then
level,
there's activation functions, right?
yes, yes.
Okay.
We not to know everything about the thing Keras is providing, but we'll just make use of thing which is required to solve problem. Okay. Now, if you want to build any neural network, what you need is you need to have some modules for that, right? So in Keras, there are two modules for creating any neural network. One is sequential model, the other is functional model. In our previous class, we have learned about feed forward network, right? So that is a category of sequential model. You'll have sequence of layers. That's why sequential model, right? The other is functional model. We'll talk about functional model a bit later. Because I don't want to confuse you with this, right? Now, if you'll see, there's a model package, right, within Keras. Now let's see what are the different kind of models Keras support. Okay, so I'll do the same thing here also. Just models. Yeah. So there are a lot of options we are having with respect to model creations. We can use go for sequential modeling, right? Then model from config, model from JSON. All these things are not really required. We can clone some model also. The only thing that you need to be focusing on is sequential modeling. Okay. I'm just
Can you
introducing.
show me the top one where you were showing for TensorFlow?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's tf.keras.
Yeah. So
So
from
what is the difference between the two?
TensorFlow is the framework. Keras
Yeah.
is the module, a wrapper,
Okay.
right? And this is having these further submodules, right? So if we have to create a model, we will be using model module. If we
Yeah.
have to make use of defining a layers, we will be making use of layers module.
Yes.
Okay, and now this is one stage deeper. So within this model module, we are having multiple things,
Okay.
right? So sequential is one.
So
Okay.
sequential is the one which will be used in feed forward network or
Yes,
sequential networks, right? Okay.
correct, correct. Now, how do I import this sequential module? So what I can do is from tensorflow.keras.models import
Sequential.
sequential. Okay. So this will load sequential module in my workspace. Okay. Now I need to instantiate this sequential module. So create sequential module. Okay. So what I can do is I'll so here I'm just instantiating sequential module. Okay. Now till this point everything is clear, right?
Yes.
Okay. So after that, what happens in neural network is we are having multiple layers, right, in neural network. So in Keras, we have seen that we have a model for creating layers. So let us see what are the different kind of layers we can create in our model, our neural network. Okay. So instead of this model, I'll do layers, right? So these are the different types of layer we have in uh, Keras, right?
And you're skipping the underscore, right? Because those are not
Yes,
layers.
yes,
In everywhere I see you're putting that if underscore not an I.
yes, yes, right. So out of this, the most important thing here to note here is dense layer. Where is the dense? Yeah, dense one. So this dense layer means it's basically talking about feed forward network. So feed forward network is also called as dense layer. Okay, they both are one and the same thing.
Okay.
So out of this entire layer options we are having, we will be dealing with dense layer. There are certain more layers also we'll be talking about, for example, convolution network, but that will come in later stage. Okay.
So whatever layer that I'm seeing right now, right? Like there are a bunch of layers. Are those layers like very popular? Are they used? All of them are used every time, like in the industry, or some of them are like very commonly used, and others are I don't know, maybe used or not.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, again, it depends upon the type of problem you are solving. For example, if you're dealing with image data, so most of the time you will be using this convolution layer,
Okay.
right? If you are dealing with tabular data, so most of the time you will be dealing with dense data, dense layer.
Mm.
Okay. Uh, Personally, I haven't used all of these different kind of layer. Mainly, I have used dense and convolution layer, but the remaining data layer you are seeing, these are also very specific to certain kind of problem. For example, if you're dealing with graph data, right? So for that, you'll have another type of layers.
What data?
Graph data. For
Acha,
example,
graph. Okay. Okay.
you are trying to do some social network mining, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now, let me tell you how do we. So let us quickly create a small neural network. Okay. So what I need. So to create a neural network, what are the things I need?
Model,
Yeah, model,
layer,
layer,
and
and activation function.
weights. Oh, yeah,
Activation.
activation function. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So first of all, I have already imported model and layers. The only thing pending is the activations, right?
Yeah.
But from layers, let me specifically import dense layer, dense and activations. Otherwise, we have to keep on writing a big line every time. So then from TensorFlow dot keras dot layers. So we have a lot of options in layers, as we saw. I'm using only dense and activation layer activations. Okay. All right. We have already instantiated our model as sequential. Now let me add. So right now we have instantiated model, right? But this network is hollow right now. It is not having any layer. Now we have to keep adding layers in this model, and we need to set neurons in each layer, right? So that's what we're gonna see now.
One
First,
question, Ashutosh.
Mhm.
So from you're importing dense and activation from layers itself. Is
Yes,
activation also part of layer? I thought it is outside, right? Like we have model separately, layer separate, and
y-
activation is also separate.
activations you have seen here, no? Here you have seen activation. Is
Yeah,
there
so
any?
activation is under Keras, right? It is not under
No,
layers.
this is different activation. This starts with small a, and this is different
Oh, okay,
activation.
okay.
This is activation function like sigmoid and all.
The, so the activation, the small a activation is not that sigmoid and all. That's a
Yes,
different thing.
yes.
Okay,
That's a
okay.
different thing. Okay. So I'm creating a dense layer. Dense layer means what? Each neuron will be connected to every other neuron, right? And I want to keep two neurons in my first network, first layer. So that's why I mentioned two here. Activation function I want to keep here is ReLU. So you have seen activation function as sigmoid. Now I'm keeping here ReLU. I'll talk what is ReLU activation function. But for now, you can just understand that ReLU is one kind of activation function. And now I have to define my input shape, the shape of my input data. Okay. So here what I'll do 4,1. That means what? My data will have a total a total 4 column, but rows it can be anything, right?
Hang on. So in this model dot add, that
Mhm.
activation should be capital A or it is small a only?
Here it should be small a only.
So that activation and the capital activation, are
They
they two different things?
no, they both are same thing. I'll tell you when I'll use activation function. So you see here, what I have done is I have uh, added a layer, and within that layer, I am adding an activation function in one step only, right? You could have done something like this also. You have created dense layer first, and then you have added activation function in the next step. So if you
Okay.
want to go in that way, then you have to make use of this activation module. I'm not using activation module in separate. I'm defining my activation function for that layer in one go.
No, I understood that you're doing it in one go, but that's a string activation in lowercase, right? AC, where you have done in with the lowercase a,
Mhm.
that is a like a variable name that you just created, or that activation is related to that capital activation.
This is related to this. See, these two things both are the same thing. Now in this add, here we are passing as a parameter. This is an argument.
Okay, okay.
Okay. Now instead of writing this, instead of doing this, I could have done something like this also, where I would have added the layer first, dense
Mhm.
2, and I could have, added the activation function in separate step.
But now you're giving capital A. I think that's what is not clear to
Yeah,
me.
I'll clear that. See, both this thing are doing same thing. This statement and these block, they both are doing exactly same thing. If I have to do this in one go, right, then
Mm-hmm.
I can pass the activation function as an argument to my this dense function. If I
Okay,
don't want to do here, in that case I need to invoke a separate module, and then I have to pass my activation function.
I
Both the
see.
both the approach is correct. Sometimes what happens is you're not really sure what kind of activation function you want to pass up to some time, right? After 6 or 7 layers only you want to put your activation function. So in that case, people go for this approach. They first of all create all the layers, and then after that in each layer they put their activation function. So this is one way of
Okay.
defining your layer. This is another way of defining layer. I prefer to use this